If I had known that a single cup of coffee could strip away 65 years of dignity, I would never have left my bed that morning. And before I continue, if you're listening and feel this story deserves to be heard, please follow the channel. Just one small click, but it helps voices like mine not fade into silence. That morning, I sat quietly at the breakfast table in my daughter Lisa's sunlit kitchen, cradling a hot mug she had just brewed, strong, the way her husband liked it. I thought it would be a peaceful morning. I believed I was safe. "Grandma," my grandson Travis said casually, as if asking me to pass the butter, "can I borrow your credit card again? There's something I need for my gaming setup. Just $5,000. 035. I didn't flinch. I simply said, "No." That was when Lisa snapped. She didn't shout right away. First, she let the silence creep in, thick, poisonous. Then suddenly, her hand shot out. Not to strike me, no, she wasn't that bold. She did something worse. She tipped the mug straight into my lap. Scalding liquid burned through my thin pajamas. I gasped, leapt to my feet. The ceramic shattered on the floor. My thighs stung, my dignity shriveled. Lisa didn't even blink. "If you're going to be selfish, maybe it's time you leave," she said, arms folded like she was enforcing company policy. "Either give Travis what he needs, or find another place to live. We're not running a charity." That word, charity, cut deeper than the coffee. I stood there, dripping, burned, my eyes locked on hers. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt. But no, it was calculation. I was being measured, weighed, and dismissed as inconvenient. $5,000, I repeated, voice trembling but calm. For a child to buy toys? Lisa's lips curled. "It's not a big deal. You've got money. You've been sitting on it since Dad died. Why are you being so difficult?" "I've been paying the utilities," I whispered. "And I never once asked you to cover my prescriptions." Her eyes rolled. "You're lucky I let you stay here at all after your surgery. Remember? You couldn't even walk. I've managed your entire life. And now this." I wanted to scream, not from the burn, but from betrayal. Her care had never been love. It was a leash. At first invisible, then tightening, then cutting into me. And in that moment, I realized, this was no longer my daughter. This was someone who saw me as leverage, a resource, a stubborn old woman who had outlived her usefulness. Behind her, Travis looked bored, still waiting for the card. My hands shook as I dabbed my thighs with a paper towel. No one moved to help. My chest tightened, my heart pounding. Lisa smirked, arms crossed. Either hand over the card, or be out of here by the end of the day. There it was, not a request, but a threat. I looked at the puddle of coffee, the shards of porcelain with fading flowers, fragments of something once beautiful. Like me. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked to the sink, rinsed my burned hands under cold water, then said quietly, "I'll be gone before sunset." Lisa blinked. Maybe she expected me to fight. But what she never understood is that silence isn't weakness. Some debts aren't paid with money, but with finality. The door clicked shut behind me. Alone in the guest room, my legs still stung. But the real wound wasn't from the coffee. It was knowing she meant it. She wanted me gone, not because she couldn't afford me, but because I was no longer useful. I sat on the edge of the bed. My bed, the one I had slept in after my hip replacement. The bed Lisa had tucked me into, back when I thought she was still my daughter, not my warden. She had called it temporary. I believed her. Gratefully, foolishly. Now I saw it clearly. It was a trap. She managed my prescriptions, the groceries, the bills, for her convenience. She took over my banking, told me to rest. She even told the neighbors I was too tired to socialize, when in truth she never told me they came by. And I let her. I let her help me right out of my own independence. Slowly, I rose and went to the closet. My suitcase still sat on the top shelf, dusty but intact. I pulled it down, clutching its edges as if holding on to the last piece of myself. I steadied myself on the dresser, my hip aching, but I didn't wince. I didn't groan. Pain was familiar. What cut deeper was the silence. No knock. No footsteps. No one came to check. Lisa had screamed in the kitchen loud enough for the entire block to hear, and Travis had seen me flinch, freeze, stumble for words. But they didn't care. Not enough to follow. Not enough to soften the blow. I opened the top drawer and pulled out an envelope I had hidden months ago beneath the spare linens. Copies of my birth certificate, insurance cards, a printed routing number from my bank. I hadn't fully understood why I tucked them away back then, but now I did. Some part of me had always known this moment would come. As I packed, I made no sound. No sobs, no muttering. Each piece of clothing folded with steady hands. My jewelry pouch rolled carefully, just costume pieces, and one pearl ring from my late husband. But it was mine. Mine. From the hallway came the low hum of the television. Lisa was back to her routine, watching one of those home renovation shows she always said I wouldn't understand. Travis was probably in his room, headphones on, spending someone else's money. I zipped the suitcase and sat down again, just for a moment. My eyes scanned the room. The framed photo of Lisa and me at her college graduation still sat on the dresser. She had insisted I be in that picture. I looked proud then. I wasn't proud now. I was awake. The doorknob turned briefly, then stopped. They heard me packing, and didn't care enough to open it. Or maybe they hoped I'd vanish quietly, so they wouldn't have to say the words again. They didn't know me at all. I sat back, suitcase at my feet, heart pounding like I was in an ER waiting for a diagnosis. But I already had one. I wasn't broken. I was discarded. And that meant I was free. I picked up my phone, scrolled through the names until I found one I hadn't used in months. Gerald M. Retired attorney. Once my neighbor. Still my friend. Still kind. I hit call. He answered on the second ring. Ruth, he said. Everything all right? No, I replied, voice steady. But it will be. When I hung up, the silence pressed in again. That awful buzzing kind of silence that only exists in houses where love used to live. I sat back down, one hand resting on my suitcase, the other brushing the edge of the nightstand where my reading glasses usually sat. But I hadn't read in weeks. Not since the last time I felt like a person here, instead of inventory. That's when I noticed something. My purse. It was lighter than usual. I unzipped the front pocket. No wallet. No bank card. No ID. My chest tightened. I opened the second zipper. Then the third. Nothing. My fingers trembled as I dumped the contents onto the bed. Loose peppermints. Tissues. An old lipstick. No card. No wallet. Nothing. I'd had it yesterday. I was sure. I used it to pay for my prescription ointment. Lisa had driven me, insisted on holding my bag while I walked slower. I thought she was being kind. No. She was creating an opportunity. I could hear her voice in my head, from months ago. So casual back then. Let me just take care of your bills, Mom. It's easier if everything goes through one account. I'll set up automatic payments. You don't have to worry about a thing. Just focus on healing, okay? And I let her. I handed over access. Passwords. Accounts. Trusted my daughter. And now, I couldn't even remember the last time I saw a bank statement with my name on it. She had everything go paperless. Again, to simplify. What a fool I'd been. The words rose in my throat like bile. They loved my money more than me. I wasn't family. I was a line item. I walked slowly to the dresser, opened the second drawer. Inside, a small notebook, the kind I once used for grocery lists when I lived alone. On the last page, I had scribbled down my account numbers months ago, just in case. I stared at the numbers. They were familiar. Mine. But when was the last time I held the card that matched them? I searched everywhere. The jewelry box. Beneath the mattress. Even inside my old Bible. Nothing. They hadn't just asked for my money. They took it. I sank back on the bed, dizzy. The sting of the coffee was fading, replaced by something colder, sharper. A humiliation that burned like rust at the back of my throat. And the worst part? I had let it happen. I let her become my keeper. I told myself she was helping, that she was stepping up. But no. She was stepping in front of me. Over me. Around me. I hadn't seen it clearly until that moment. Not when she told the bridge club I was too tired to play. Not when she intercepted calls from my bank. Not when she started pre-approving my Amazon orders like I was a child. She had been locking the doors, gently, one by one, until I had nowhere left to go. That was the part that nearly made me cry. I wasn't weak. I had survived 30 years in the ER. The death of my husband. A hip that shattered like glass. But I had not survived this gracefully. I looked again at the framed photo of Lisa and me, the one from her graduation. She wore that same smug smile then too, back before I understood. Some daughters don't grow up to love you back. They just grow up to use your shadow. The phone buzzed. Gerald. A text. I'm outside. Ready when you are. I stared at the screen, then at the broken pieces of trust scattered invisibly across the room. I wasn't just leaving a house today. I was leaving the lie that I still mattered to her. By the time I opened the door, Gerald was already halfway up the walkway, a calm urgency in his step. His navy windbreaker, his sturdy canvas bag, like we were just heading off for a picnic. He didn't ask questions. He didn't look at me like I was broken. He just said, "You ready?" I nodded. The house behind me was silent. No doors opening. No footsteps rushing to stop me. That silence was proof. Proof they thought I wouldn't leave. That I couldn't. Gerald lifted my suitcase, gently took the tote from my shoulder. "You got everything?" he asked as we reached his car. "Everything I still own?" I answered. He opened the passenger door. "Careful with your hip." That one sentence almost broke me, not because it was kind, but because I realized how long it had been since anyone was kind without a receipt attached. The drive began in silence. The streets blurred, each turn carrying me farther from the house that stopped being home the day Lisa started calculating my worth like it was a monthly bill. Halfway through town, Gerald finally spoke. "You know," he said, "I saw you crying last week." I blinked. "What?" His eyes stayed on the road. "On the balcony. You were sitting real still, holding that little ceramic bird." I didn't want to intrude. I didn't even remember the bird. Or the tears. I started to speak. Stopped. It was like I'd been living inside someone else's life, a smaller one. "I figured something was wrong," he continued, "when I didn't see you at the library anymore." That was when it hit me, how far the isolation had gone. Lisa hadn't just taken my money. She had taken my routines, my friendships, my freedom to walk 2 blocks, drink bad coffee from a paper cup, laugh with the retired choir ladies. She hadn't locked me in a room. She just made the rest of the world harder to reach. "You're not the first I've helped like this," Gerald said quietly. "Old folks getting managed right out of their autonomy. Happens more than people admit." I said nothing. Couldn't. I was too busy holding back my tears like passengers who had missed their stop. "I made a few calls this morning," Gerald went on. "There's a place I think you'll like. Senior community with independent units. You mentioned once you liked the one with the koi pond." I turned to him. "That place is too expensive. I saw the brochures before. Lisa said it wasn't realistic." "Lisa also said you needed help ordering your own socks," he replied dryly. "Don't give her authority she never earned." That made me smile. Barely. He reached into the console, pulled out a slim manila envelope. Start here. Just some pamphlets. Oh, and we'll talk to a financial protection officer too. If what you're saying about the missing card is true, we may need to act sooner than later. A heavy thud in my chest. Not panic. Not dread. Just the sound of truth landing where it finally belonged. I didn't want it to come to this, I whispered. She was my daughter. Gerald nodded, slowing as we approached a light. And I'm sure you loved her well. But sometimes, love is just the paper wrapped around the poison. I looked out the window. Somewhere behind me, Lisa might have noticed I was gone. Maybe not. But ahead of me, for the first time in a long time, I saw a gate opening. Not a cage. A door. We pulled up to the entrance. Just past 11. Golden Pines. That was the name. The sign was modest. No gold. No pine. Just clean lettering on weathered wood. The board out front was plain, but beyond it the grounds looked like something from a life I used to think belonged to other people. Hydrangeas in bloom, a shaded bench beneath a willow, a koi pond catching sunlight like glass. Gerald parked, turned off the engine, and let the quiet sit. I stared at the entrance. I'm not ready, I whispered. For what? He asked. To want this. He didn't argue. He just nodded. That was what I liked about Gerald. He never filled silence with pity or pretty words. He understood some moments deserved room to breathe. We stepped into the lobby, and I noticed it right away. It smelled of lemon balm and fresh-baked rolls. Not antiseptic. Not sadness. It smelled like living. The receptionist, Leah, rose to greet us. Kind, not saccharine. You must be Ruth, she said. Gerald called ahead. Said you'd be visiting today. Welcome. I almost corrected her. Visiting sounded too permanent. But I didn't. Because something inside me whispered, let it be. We toured the courtyard first. Gerald walked slowly beside me, letting me set the pace. A small library. A crafts room. Even a yoga class for seniors. I watched two women laugh as they struggled to roll up their mats. It struck me, they weren't being managed. They were living. Choosing. Every room had sunlight. Every hallway had windows. No one hovered. No one asked for permission to step outside. When we reached the koi pond, I stopped. The fish drifted beneath the surface, gentle, aimless, like they had nowhere urgent to be. I used to sit by water like this when I needed to think, I said. You still do, Gerald replied. We sat for a while. I didn't speak. I just existed. For the first time in months, I wasn't someone's burden. I wasn't Lisa's headache. I wasn't Travis's wallet. I was just Ruth. When we returned inside, Leah led us to a quiet tea room. She brought a tray, 2 cups, lemon cookies, a brochure. Nothing pushy. No sales pitch. Just a gentle offering. I wrapped both hands around the cup, grateful for its warmth, and glanced at the brochure. There it was in print, the very thing Lisa told me never to consider. A studio. With kitchenette. And balcony. Month to month. Move-in ready. Don't get your hopes up, Lisa had sneered once. Places like that are for rich retirees, not people like you. But the number on the page. It wasn't cheap. Yet it wasn't impossible. Not if I had what I used to have, access to my own accounts. A say in my own life. I don't know if I can afford this, I murmured, more to myself than to anyone. Gerald sipped his tea. Then let's find out. But first, you file the paperwork. A financial protection order. I'll help. That word landed heavy in my chest. Protection. Not because I was fragile, but because I was done pretending I didn't need protection from my own daughter. I looked again at the brochure. Then at Gerald. Okay, I said. Let's start. And just like that, I stepped into a new chapter. One with locks only I held the keys to. At Gerald's kitchen table, We spread out everything I had left to my name. Insurance cards. Old bank statements. A Medicare folder Lisa once mocked as too analog. And a thin notepad, its yellow pages streaked where my tears had blurred the ink. Every suspicious moment I had scribbled down, trying to keep track. I know it's messy, I said. But I tried. Gerald adjusted his glasses. Messy is fine. Truth usually is. He flipped through the pages, nodding. Recurring charges from stores you never shop at. A Netflix profile named Travmaster. PayPal withdrawals at 3 a.m. This is good. Really good. I sat taller. My hands folded. Back straight. I didn't feel small anymore. Just focused. I had something they never expected. Evidence. The card might have vanished, but my memory hadn't. And now, looking backward with clear eyes, the picture sharpened. Lisa hadn't cared for me out of love. She had strategized. Do you have access to a printer? Gerald asked. I nodded. In Cliff's old study. Still hooked up to the Dell. Tomorrow, we'll scan these pages, he said. I'll connect you with a financial abuse specialist. They're discreet. They don't just reverse charges, they build protection cases. He paused. But we have to act fast. Once Lisa realizes you're not coming back, she might try to get ahead of this. Especially if she still controls the accounts. She does, I admitted. At least some of them. But the title to the house. I stopped. Yes. Gerald looked up. It's in my name. Lisa had it transferred before my surgery. She said it would make the hospital paperwork easier. Gerald blinked. Then leaned back slowly. You mean, the house she's living in? Yes. He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Well, he said, standing. That changes everything. Gerald reached for a small lockbox on the shelf behind him. Inside was a stack of official-looking forms, tabs sticking out like teeth. You need to make copies of your documents. Every page. Get notarized statements if you can. List the exact dates Lisa made withdrawals. Even better. I nodded, already reaching for my notepad again. My handwriting was shaky, but my memory was steady. Should I call her? I asked. Let her know I'm filing? No, Gerald said firmly. Let the paperwork speak. It'll say it better than you ever could. That line stayed with me. Let the paperwork speak. Let it carry all the words I wanted to scream but never dared. Let it bear witness to the years of quiet erasure. The theft wrapped in hugs. The smothering disguised as care. Let it say what I couldn't. You tried to own me. But I kept the receipts. That night, I scanned every single page. I sorted folders until midnight. My back ached, my eyes stung, but I didn't stop. Because now I had a purpose bigger than survival. Now, I had a case. And whether or not they ever apologized, the record would remain. For the lawyers. For the courts. For me. Because I was finally putting it all on paper, the truth they never thought I'd live long enough to tell. Lisa didn't know I still had the title deed. She never asked, never thought to. She just assumed her temporary guardianship of my life had become permanent, like everything else she quietly claimed. So when she pulled into the driveway 2 days later and saw a stranger standing in her front yard with a clipboard, I imagine it felt like a glitch in her system. The perfect order she had built, cracking. The stranger was a real estate agent. Carla. Referred to me by Gerald's connections. Professional. Discreet. Not the type to gossip. Lisa stepped out of her car furious already, I'm sure. I wasn't there. I was exactly where I needed to be, 3 towns over, on the shaded balcony of my temporary apartment at Golden Pines. A glass of iced tea in one hand, a signed property reassessment form in the other. Gerald had dropped it off that morning. I didn't need to be present for the storm. I just needed the paperwork to arrive first. Lisa called me, of course. 3 times in a row. Straight to voicemail. The 4th time, I answered. Mom, what the hell is going on? There's a realtor here doing a walkthrough of my house. Your house. Whatever. You ordered an evaluation. I waited a full second before replying. Correct. Silence. Then venom. You're not serious. I'm very serious. I could almost hear her pacing. You don't even live here anymore. What is this? Some kind of guilt trip? Are you trying to embarrass me? No, I said plainly. I'm just reclaiming what was always mine. This is my home, she hissed. No, I answered again, calm and absolute. It's the home you've been squatting in, managing with money that was never yours. I let you play caretaker. That role is now revoked. You can't just throw us out. I didn't throw you out, Lisa. You told me to leave. The silence after that was like snowfall. Soft, but suffocating. She had no idea I remembered everything. How the deed was transferred into my name under the guise of hospital paperwork. How I signed without reading closely, trusting her. But I had read one thing. One thing I remembered. I never gave her full power of attorney. So technically, legally, morally, the house was mine. And now, it was being reassessed. Protected. Lisa finally spoke again, low and icy. You're being cruel. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. Instead, I said the one sentence that silenced her completely. You only miss me now that I said no. I ended the call. Carla texted half an hour later. Evaluation completed. Client Lisa attempted to interfere, but I remained professional. Strong potential for resale. Will follow up tomorrow. Gerald called too. She tried to call me, he said. Left a voicemail full of threats. Let her threaten, I replied. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of her anger. I wasn't even angry myself. Not anymore. I was something far scarier. Certain. Certain that love without respect is just possession. Certain that family means nothing when it's built on control. Certain that even if I had nothing left but this chair, this tea, and my name on a legal document, I would still be freer than I ever was in that house. That night, I went to bed early. And for the first time in years, I locked the door. Not because I feared. I didn't lock the door that night because I was afraid of what might come in. I locked it because, for the first time in years, I had something worth keeping out. The front doors at Golden Pines are glass. Heavy but elegant. You can see out, but no one comes in unless invited. That's why I didn't flinch when I saw Lisa coming. That morning, I was in the community library, reading an article Gerald had highlighted for me, on elder financial abuse. My tea sat untouched at my side, bitter on the tongue, but the words on the page burned hotter anyway. Then the phone on the desk rang. There's a Lisa here to see you, the receptionist said calmly. Would you like us to bring her in? No, I replied. But you can let her know I'm watching. They didn't ask why. They didn't need to. The staff had seen this before. Children showing up only when their names were on the line instead of the caller ID. I slipped quietly into the sunroom beside the lobby, where I could see everything without being seen. Lisa stood in the foyer, tight jeans, red blouse, fury written across her face. She paced in tight circles, like a lioness trapped in a showroom. Her expression was disbelief itself, as if the air here had personally offended her. The receptionist approached again. Lisa pointed sharply in my direction, accusatory, impatient. She didn't know I was behind tinted glass. She didn't know that for once, she was the one on the outside. I stepped back just far enough to remain hidden. Not out of fear, out of choice. It's a kind of power people like Lisa never expect you to reclaim. Not the power to fight, but the power to ignore. 10 minutes passed. Security arrived. Not loud, not hostile, just steady. A woman in a navy blazer with a badge approached Lisa, speaking calmly. Lisa's mouth moved faster than her sense of irony, her arms cutting through the air, pointing at the brochure stand, the ceiling, maybe the air itself. Anywhere but inward. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed out. The doors slid shut behind her like punctuation. I returned to my seat in the library. The tea was cold now, but I wasn't. Later that afternoon, Gerald came by. I told him what happened. She came all this way just to be denied at the door, he said, shaking his head. She must have expected a different version of you. She expected the old version, I answered. The one who thought silence meant peace. He nodded slowly. That version's gone. We walked out to the garden together. I carried a small tray with 2 iced lemonades the staff had left for us. I didn't need to explain. They already knew. I settled onto the bench I liked best, the one with ivy climbing its legs, the koi pond just a few yards away. A soft breeze stirred the leaves. Lisa had come all that way for something. Control, maybe. A confession. A reversal. She left with nothing. Because I had nothing left to give her. Not guilt. Not permission. Not even my attention. And the peace I felt in that moment, it didn't come from winning. It came from the sound of footsteps leaving, with no door left open behind them. I reached for Gerald's hand, gave it a light squeeze. I don't think I'm afraid of her anymore, I whispered. He smiled. That, he said, means she's really gone. 2 days later, Gerald called just after breakfast. It's time, he said. You still want to sell the house? I didn't hesitate. Yes. He met me an hour later at Golden Pines, a file folder in hand. Inside was the full title deed, my notarized identity verification, and a trust form, blank, but ready to protect everything Lisa thought was hers. We sat on the sun porch, papers spread between us. She's going to come unglued, I said. Gerald smirked. Let her. Unglued means exposed. I signed line after line, print, initial, signature. Cliff would have teased me for the way my tongue stuck out a little when I focused. But this wasn't just a sale. It was a severing. The house Lisa lived in, claimed, bragged about, it was never hers. She painted the walls, yes. Bought a couch with my credit, yes. Changed doorknobs, picked out tile. But the bones, the foundation, that was mine. Always had been. We filed the trust paperwork discreetly, transferring the property into the Ruth Langley Irrevocable Living Trust. Not because I feared a lawsuit, but because I wanted something ironclad, something not even a manipulative daughter could claw her way into. By the next day, the title had shifted. Lisa wouldn't know yet. But the law would. And I had something else brewing too. With the help of the financial abuse specialist Gerald introduced me to, I filed a request to freeze all transactions tied to my original bank account. Any withdrawals from the past 6 months would be flagged. The specialist asked, "Do you have backup evidence?" "I have 12 pages, I said, handing her my journal. Dates, details, withdrawals. She flipped through it, her eyebrows climbing higher with each page. "You weren't just being used," she said. "You were being harvested." I didn't flinch. Because I already knew. And now so did the law. I returned to Golden Pines with an unusual lightness. Not joy. Not yet. But something like breath, like I wasn't holding everything in just to stay polite. Back in my room, I pulled out an envelope Cliff had left me the year before he died. I had never opened it. It sat at the bottom of my keepsake box, marked in his handwriting. Only when you're tired of pretending you're okay. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter. Short. Just a few lines. "Ruth, if they ever make you feel smaller than the woman I married, don't argue. Don't explain. Just leave. You don't owe anyone the right to dim your light. Use what's yours. And make damn sure they can't take it again." Beneath the letter was an uncashed check. $10,000. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed, A real, aching laugh that made my ribs hurt. He knew. Even then. Cliff had known the world could turn. Even family. I called Gerald. You busy? For you. Never. Then let's sell a house, I said. And open a trust they can't touch. He paused. You ready for the fallout? I looked around my room. Sunlight streaming in. The koi pond sparkling below. My bridge scarf draped over the chair. Yes, I said. Because this time I'm not reacting. I'm reclaiming. And that check. I deposited it that afternoon. Not because I needed the money, but because I wanted the world to know I wasn't done building. Lisa always thought she'd get the last word. She counted on it. Her voice louder. Her texts longer. Her threats wrapped in guilt and faux concern. She thought silence was surrender. So when the letter arrived, thick with legal tone and official seals, I imagined she stood in her doorway for a long time before opening it. And when she did, the sound of the lock slamming shut echoed without me ever having to say a word. Inside that envelope was the beginning of the end. A formal notification from the Trust's legal counsel. Effective immediately, Lisa Andrews is no longer authorized to access any accounts, property, or financial records belonging to Ruth Langley. It was short. Professional. Bare. No blame. No begging. Just boundaries. That's what drove her mad. She called me 7 times that day. I didn't answer. The 8th time, she left a voicemail. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're listening to, instead of your own daughter? Do you even understand what you're doing? You're throwing away your family. Family. She used that word like armor, as if it could erase everything. The pressure, the gaslighting, the theft. But family isn't immunity. It's a privilege. And she lost it the moment she poured scalding coffee on my lap and told me it was my fault. I forwarded the voicemail to Gerald, just in case. Then I did something quiet, but powerful. I mailed her nothing. No response. No explanation. I let the letter do what I never could, draw the line with ink and law and consequences. Lines she couldn't cry her way past. That evening Gerald called. She got it, didn't she? Oh, she got it, I said, sipping chamomile from my favorite chipped mug. You can always tell when they realize the power is gone. He laughed. You didn't even flinch. Why would I? I said. I already buried the version of me that explained herself. That night I slept with the windows open. The air smelled like rain. And in my dreams, I wasn't hiding anymore. I was standing in the middle of that house, my house, holding the keys I never gave away. Lisa was nowhere. No yelling. No begging. Just echoes. The next morning, I found a small white envelope slipped under my door at Golden Pines. Handwritten. No return address. I knew it was hers. I didn't open it. I tore it in half and fed it into the shredder at the front desk. Because this time, I wasn't curious. This time, I didn't need to hear her say sorry only to follow it with, but I need. This time, I trusted silence more than her words. And silence, when chosen, is its own kind of strength. Later that afternoon, Gerald brought more papers, updates to the trust, a list of protected accounts, phone numbers in case I ever needed direct contact with law enforcement or the trust officer. As I signed the last form, he looked up. You know, he said, you've done something a lot of people never get to do. What's that? You ended the cycle. Not with a bang. Not with a scream. But with a locked door. And a clear name. I leaned back in my chair. And for the first time since Cliff died, I let myself believe I'd finally come home to myself. It happened on a Thursday. Just after lunch. The halls of Golden Pines were quiet, bathed in that soft golden glow right before the koi pond lit up. I was sitting on a garden bench with Marjorie, our hands resting on the same folded quilt. We just finished our usual chat about the bridge tournament schedule and how none of the new ladies shuffled properly. Gerald was due to join us soon. And that's when I saw them. Lisa and Travis, walking up the curved brick path that led to the front entrance. Lisa's stride, furious, too fast. Travis lagging behind, slouched, entitled. And I remembered the $5,000 coffee, all over again. They were coming for a showdown. But what they didn't know was this. I had nothing left to lose. The security guard saw them first. Doris, sharp-eyed, steady. She stepped from behind the front desk before they could touch the door. I watched as Lisa gestured wildly, pointing toward the back garden. Travis shoved his hands deep in his hoodie, rolling his eyes. Doris stood firm. I didn't get up. I didn't run. I didn't even flinch. Marjorie glanced at me, stiffening. Should I call Gerald? No, I said. Let her see me calm. I wanted Lisa to witness it, what peace looked like when it wasn't begging for her approval. She finally spotted me through the glass. Moved to push past the desk. Doris blocked her path. Lisa's voice rose. I couldn't hear the words, but the shape of them was familiar. Rage, desperation, that choking cocktail of control slipping through fingers. Travis noticed me then. His eyes met mine. And for a moment, I saw it. Not guilt. Not love. But panic. Not because he missed me. Because the money was gone. And I wasn't going to be milked anymore. Doris lifted a hand, pointed firmly toward the parking lot. Travis muttered something and turned away first. Good. Let the boy lead for once. Lisa stood there a moment longer, arms rigid, her face pale with anger. And for the briefest moment, her lips trembled. She mouthed something. Mom. But I didn't move. Didn't wave. Didn't rise. I stayed right there on that bench, holding Marjorie's hand, wrapped in the same quilt Cliff used to drape over my shoulders when I fell asleep on the couch during Jeopardy reruns. They left. I watched until they were just shadows on the driveway, until the engine rumbled and the car pulled away, a car that once carried my entire life inside it. Marjorie exhaled. You didn't even blink. I smiled. I already said goodbye. They're just now hearing it. Later, Gerald arrived with a bag of scones and a small bouquet from his garden. I told him what happened. He nodded. They'll try again. I know, I said. But I won't. That night, I wrote in my journal. When they came with fury, I stayed with peace. That's how you know it's over, when you don't need to yell back. I tore the page out, slipped it into a small frame beside my bed. Because next time they came looking for a reaction, all they would find was a reflection of themselves, on the other side of a locked door. It arrived 2 days later. A small ivory envelope, hand-addressed, dropped into Golden Pine's mailbox. The handwriting was unmistakable, Lisa's. Perfect cursive, tilted just enough to pretend elegance. I stared at it for a full minute. Not because I didn't know what it was, but because I did. Marjorie spotted me, still in the lobby, letter in one hand, coffee in the other. From her? She asked. I nodded. Want me to open it for you? No, I said. I don't need anyone else to see this lie. I didn't open it there. I carried it upstairs, laid it on the small writing desk Cliff once used for taxes and letters to his war buddies. I waited until the sun hit the far window, the way it always did when I sat beside him. Then I sat down, took a breath, opened it. The first word, Mom. Not dear Mom. Not I'm sorry. Just Mom. Like she still had that right. The first paragraph was exactly what I expected. Shaky regret, excuses, how things got out of hand, how she never meant to push me aside, how it all happened so fast. She used the word misunderstanding like a bandage. Then came the real reason she wrote. Line 3. We're having a hard time now. Bills piling up. Travis didn't qualify for the car loan after all. There it was. The ask. Like always. The apology was just bait. And I was supposed to swallow it whole. Because once I used to. Once I believed in second chances without proof. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Not the one who let Lisa rearrange her mail and call it kindness. Not the one who softened every instinct just to keep the peace. I had made peace with something else. The truth. That not every daughter is a blessing. Some are warnings. The letter ended. Maybe we can talk. I really miss you. We all do. I closed the page. Stared at the envelope again. It was thick. Heavier than it should have been. Something else inside. I reached in. A check. Drawn from one of the old joint accounts Lisa had once set up to streamline. Uncashed. Torn slightly at the corner. $3,500. Memo line. Car repairs. I hadn't written it. But my name was printed clear as daylight. She must have kept it. Or forged it. Or both. I didn't need to know which. All I knew was this. It wasn't an olive branch. It was bait. A fake tear and a familiar signature. I folded the check in half. Then in half again. And again. Until it disappeared into my palm, like every false promise she had ever made. I walked it straight to the shredder. No words. No flinch. Just paper turning into dust. I left the empty envelope on my desk, let it sit there like a carcass, a reminder that not every letter is meant to be answered. Later that afternoon, Gerald came by with his usual lemon cake. He saw it and raised an eyebrow. She tried again. I handed him the remaining half of the letter. He read in silence, then passed it back. Still thinks you're a mark. Not anymore, I said. That night, I didn't journal. I didn't need to. Because the sentence had already written itself in my head. I don't care what you meant. What you did was enough. The call came just after dawn. I was up early, watching the koi through the morning mist, a cup of hot water steeping beside me. Gerald's voice was calm but firm. The trust flagged another forged check. Same account. Same signature. But you didn't write it. I know, I said. She sent me one last week. There was a pause. Well, he said. Now the bank knows too. It turned out Lisa had tried one more time to dip into my old accounts. But this time, the trust's protective locks snapped shut. The bank had proof. Withdrawals, signatures, emails from her IP address, even a voicemail she'd left for a representative, asking about her mother's balance, as if she still had any right to my name. She wasn't subtle. She was desperate. Gerald continued. The financial abuse specialist filed a report with the Elder Protection Unit. It's under review by investigators as we speak. My chest didn't tighten. It expanded. Because I finally knew. I hadn't just escaped. I had set the trap. A few hours later, 2 plainclothes officers arrived at Golden Pines. Not for Lisa, but for me. A quiet interview. Courteous. Gentle. One took notes, the other asked questions about my records, my journal, the history of withdrawals. I handed them copies of everything. Itemized. Highlighted. I was ready. When they left, the younger officer said softly, "You're not the first, Mrs. Langley. But you're one of the few who saw it early enough." I almost corrected him. It wasn't early. It was just early enough. By noon, I had confirmation. Lisa was under investigation. For financial misconduct. Elder fraud. Forgery. Travis, too, had been tied to at least one flagged transaction. I didn't rejoice. But I didn't mourn either. I sat in the garden and thought about all the times Lisa had said, "You're lucky to have me," while rearranging my life into something that served her. She had always treated me like a locked door she already held the keys to. She never thought I'd change the locks. But I had. Marjorie came by later that afternoon with warm banana bread and 2 mugs of ginger tea. She already knew. Everyone at Golden Pines knew. Not because I told them, but because they'd seen it. The storm came. And I had stayed seated through it. "Do you think she'll be arrested?" Marjorie asked gently. I don't know, I said. And it's not up to me anymore. That's what freedom felt like. Not vengeance. Distance. Lisa had already lost the one thing she couldn't forge back: access. Access to me. To my name. To my mind. My life. She didn't just lose money. She lost the game. Because when you gamble on someone's silence, and they finally speak, that's when you realize you were never winning. Later that night, Gerald and I sat on the back patio under a wide navy sky. He poured us each a small glass of wine. She underestimated you every step of the way, he said. I underestimated me too, I replied. He raised his glass. To recalculating. We clinked. And I said something I hadn't said in years, but knew was finally true. I'm safe. Not just from Lisa, but from the need to explain myself to anyone who ever thought my kindness meant surrender. That night, I slept with the window open again. And when the wind picked up, it didn't sound like warning. It sounded like applause.